TechBusters proudly brought to you by Ericsson.
Good evening and welcome to TechBusters. Welcome to the show. This is the discussion point for the technology revolution that is happening all around us. Lovely to have you on the show and lovely to have my co-host, Mr. Toby Shapshak, fresh from Prague.
Indeed.
I can't wait to hear your story about Showmax.
Yeah, very, very interesting what they're doing, and the fact that for a company that is distributed or selling a distributed product, they are themselves a distributed company. So they're doing really well. But don't forget to join in the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag TechBusters or by following at CNBC Africa. Let's see what's coming up tonight.
Tonight on TechBusters, we skateboard headfirst into Huawei's funky G-series launch, and Aki chats to Gawie Keyser from BioSSL about biometric web security that uses a one-time biometric password. It's the pinnacle of modern tech, tonight on TechBusters. South Africa and Africa have a real appetite for cellular technology, but often these devices are cost prohibitive to the younger generation. Huawei are about to change all that with the launch of their mid-range G-series phones, clearly aimed at the youth market. We attended the trendy launch in Sandton recently.
This evening's event is all focused around connecting Huawei with the youth of South Africa. It's about positioning the G-series as the youth device of preference. Well, firstly, it's super cool, and I think that's what we want to actually focus on. We want to focus on the fact that the device is a metal body device. It has fingerprint solutions. The cameras are in a class of its own, but at the same time, the pricing structure allows it to be easily accessible for the youth. So we have three categories of devices in this. It's the G3, GR5, and the G8. These devices come at price points that are very, very similar to what you would devise as the $100 to $400 range of our offerings. And they have different structured offerings with the operators in that regard. So as you can see, the setup is very youth relevant. Tonight is all about connecting with touch points together with the youth. We have a skating ramp, we have a bike ramp, we have beatboxes, I think that's what you call them. We have dancers on the stage. We even have little arcade games, talking into what the gaming factor is around what we're trying to do. So tonight is about connecting with the touch points and connecting the devices with the relevance of the youth. Over the last year, Huawei has spent a lot of time focusing on launching premium devices into the country. And for years before that, we've always had a very strong approach in the value segment. So while the value segment remains important, presence in the premium market is very important. I think it's equally important that we are cool to the people who deem us cool. And therefore, the youth focus is the most important.
I'm a professional photographer, and I've been shooting with the Huawei P9 Plus for the last while as part of one of their campaigns. A lot of people feel that cell phone cameras can't really cut the deal when you're shooting not quite professional photographs, but if you're a very good hobbyist and you want to travel on holiday, for example, and take a lot of cameras with you and stuff like that, people have never thought that smartphones are really good enough to cut the deal in that regard. And Huawei's been really smart in that they've taken a dual lens system designed by Leica. And these dual cameras work in such a way that allows you to capture images in very low light, very bright light, and it also allows you full manual control over it. And that, for me personally, is the big thing. That sells me on it, because it allows me to take full control of the camera's capabilities. Megapixels really make a difference when you want to print things out, and very few people are actually printing images now. So we're not getting. So the megapixel race, I believe, is over in a way. You don't need to say I've got 16, 22. What a lot of people don't understand is that the more megapixels you put into, you're making the individual pixels smaller, so it actually isn't necessarily capturing more light. It's like a bucket versus a paper cup. And what Huawei have done is they've used two lenses now. One is purely for color and one is purely for black and white imaging. And by combining that with whatever clever algorithm they're using, that's what results in these very crisp images, especially in low lights. If you're traveling somewhere and you want to take a decent camera with you, having full manual control over the camera allows you to take it anywhere with you. You can post straight away to Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. There's wonderful built-in application which allows you to edit those photos afterwards. And then really the sky's the limit. You know, if you're a social media person and you're out and about somewhere at an event and that you can post, shoot a video, shoot a photo, and it goes live onto any of your feeds. Okay, so the aperture is fixed at f2.2, so it gives you full control over the shutter speed, whether it's up to, I think, 25 or 30 seconds all the way to a thousandth of a second or a 2,000th of a second. And then what it does is it allows you control over the ISO, the sensitivity of the camera sensor. Now, the clever thing that Huawei have done is, even though the aperture is fixed at f2.2, they've got some smart algorithm, which I don't know how it works, but it allows you to mimic professional images with a very, very shallow depth of field or with a great amount of depth of field. Now, the way you would use those two is the shallow depth of field would be used for a portrait, and the massive depth of field would be used for, say, a landscape image. So it's not full manual in the sense that you can change your aperture as well, but there's, like I said, a very clever algorithm which helps with that. And then you can control the ISO and your shutter speed. The glass is very good. I mean, that's where Leica comes in for having made the glass in a specific way. They're a legend amongst film photographers and digital photographers. They've been around for a very long time and they know what they're doing. And it's very smart for Huawei to get somebody like that involved because it takes that argument away kind of thing. It's like, we've got such good glass. Now, it's still small in a smartphone camera, but it's like a glass in front of our sensor, and that makes a huge difference.
Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome to the studio Rick Robinson, who is the Global Co-Head of Life Sciences and Healthcare at Norton Rose Fulbright. You've got a very interesting role. You oversee the legalities of 3D printing. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, that's a fair assessment.
Because the industry has evolved quite a bit. I mean, we've seen that 3D printing is really growing at a rapid pace. They've overcome so many hurdles, especially the price hurdle.
Right.
But now 3D printing is seen as a mature technology that's asserting itself across many different verticals.
That's correct. 3D printing in some ways is like the physical counterpart of telemedicine. It allows us to have medical products created in place and avoids the logistical problem of delivery of healthcare in remote places around the world. That's why now that the price of the technology has come down so much, people are very excited about the ability to create medical devices in place.
Interesting. So why the importance of the legalities of 3D printing?
Well, there are a lot of issues with 3D printing. For one, how do you regulate these devices? Do you regulate a 3D printed device in the same way that you would regulate a traditionally manufactured device? And will you also be regulating the 3D printers itself or the software, the CAD software that is used to print the device? Right now in the United States, for example, our Food and Drug Administration has said that it is going to regulate the end product and not the kind of intermediate technologies that get you to the end product. But they're going to expect the manufacturer of the device, the 3D printed device, to be able to prove that all the processes that lead up to the actual manufacture of the 3D device have been properly validated.
That's very interesting. And the contents that you use to print what you're going to be printing, I'm sure, is also has to be regulated, because when you look at where it's going, and aside from the organ stuff in the medical field, we're looking at printing your own food. You're looking at printing your own medicine in the future. Right. So you can input whatever you want into that device, and you can get your tablets printed.
That's right. And there are companies already that are working on 3D manufacturing of medicines. And so the supply chain management of the raw materials is a very, very important process for 3D printing, because if you're talking about implantable devices, you have to make sure that the materials are biocompatible with the body, and you also have to make sure that they can be appropriately sterilized. So you look at some of these 3D devices, they're very intricate architectures, lots of nooks and crannies. And when you have lots of nooks and crannies, you could have lots of bacterial infiltration. So you have to be able to prove that you can properly sterilize the device before it's implanted in a person's body.
I mean, we're literally going to be extending our lives. When we talk about printing a heart or a liver in the future, it's not too far away.
It is.
It's just around the corner. And there's obviously a lot of ethical questions that people have to ask as well with 3D printing. Should we be doing this stuff? Should we be tampering with something that's been created by perhaps a greater being, as some people would see it?
You know, I think we're in some ways we've moved beyond that already. I mean, we're already creating all sorts of mechanisms to extend life beyond anything anybody ever anticipated. I mean, and it really is interesting how reality follows fiction in this sense that we have bionic body parts that we're making. So I think that the thing I love about the work that we do is that we see so many technological advances that make people's lives better. And our job is to help our clients develop those products and bring them to market, and it's really fascinating.
Rick, it's an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you
so
very
much
much
for your time. Thank you very much. A new replacement for petroleum is coming from a really unlikely source, pig manure. It turns out that pig waste is particularly rich in oils that are very familiar to petroleum. And while these oils are too low grade to produce gasoline, they may still work where the rubber meets the road. Civil engineer Ellie Finney has designed a sticky binder made from pig manure that can be used to make asphalt. At a cost of R7 per 4 liters to process, this new bioadhesive is much less expensive binder than petroleum, and so far it's been standing up to rigorous testing. Take a look at this, it's quite unbelievable.
Visit a pig farm and you will see and smell for yourself one of a pig farmer's biggest headaches is dealing with the mess.
We generate 43 billion gallons of swine manure in the world every year.
Which is not to say all this waste has to go to waste. Civil engineer Ellie Finney sees opportunity in pig manure, like a road stretching out in front of her.
Typically you see asphalt used on the road, the black gooey, sticky things on the road. That's made from petroleum. So this material we're making is a new product made out of pig manure, which we have a lot of it in the United States.
Finney says pig waste is particularly rich in oils that are very much like petroleum. Too low grade to make gasoline, but maybe just right for where the rubber meets the road. With support from the National Science Foundation, she and a team at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University are making a sticky binder out of pig manure.
And we call it bioadhesive.
This process is only 56 cents per gallon to process. So very low cost, high impact.
Mix it with some rocks and you get asphalt. Nano-engineer Daniel Oldham says it's critical this new material is just as durable as the asphalt used on roads now. So they're putting these samples through some rigorous tests.
Imagine a car traffic driving on top of this, putting on a load. We want to know if this thing's going to fall apart when this car comes on top of it, or if it's going to be so hard that when the car goes on top, it'll actually form cracks.
It simulates the truck traffic going back and forth, like 20,000 paths. We tested, is it gonna rot too much, like sagging? We shouldn't rot, and also it shouldn't crack at low temperature.
So far, the tests have been a success. So much so that Finney and partners have set up a company called Bioadhesives Alliance.
This one actually passed DOT spec.
Down the road, they hope to see their asphalt everywhere raw materials are abundant.
In Chile, there was a hog farm that was living near a village, and they had so much manure that their manure was spilling over into the people's water supplies. So they're literally drinking the stuff and they were getting sick. China has 10 times the amount of manure we do. So I mean, if we can take that manure away, and process it and get something valuable out of it, I mean, this could really make a difference.
We think it's scalable and cost-wise is profitable. Our vision is to help the farmer and help the construction industry, both sides. We see a win-win approach in the solution.
Swine bioadhesives. Before you poo-poo this as a stinky idea, rest assured, the smelly stuff is filtered out during the processing. The farmer can even use the leftovers as fertilizer. The idea smells like a rose to me. Figuratively, anyhow.
Gawie Keyser joins us in the studio from BioSSL, and they're a very unique company, and you may not have heard them, and they've got a unique product because it's never been done anywhere else in the world. It's got to do with biometrics, it's got to do with security, it's got to do with blockchain, and it's the modern world that we're living in. Gawie, how do I describe what you guys do?
What we do is we use a specific model for actually not using a password anymore, but using your unique features like your fingerprints, your face. DNA is coming to actually validate onto a bank or on the internet, etc., instead of using a password that you need to remember.
So your company, in your company, passwords are dead. You
Are
don't
dead.
believe in passwords, right? So when we talk about biometrics, the first thing that comes to mind is fingerprint. And I mean, my phone, most phones today, the newer generation of phones have all got fingerprint. Is that the same kind of technology? What makes yours so unique?
What makes ours unique, we never save the password. The password is a one-time password, OTP, which is then transferred over the internet. That password is only used once. Thus, if a hacker had to hack into the SSL layer of the internet, then he can do nothing with the password, because the next time the guy uses his fingerprint, it'll be a different password.
Okay, now what is SSL layer? Explain to our viewers what SSL layer is.
SSL is what all banks and secure transactions happens on.
Okay, so is your product aimed specifically at bank or consumers or just everybody?
Banks, actually everybody. It's the markets are open for it, even internal security. What's happened a lot in internal companies, you know, somebody else finds somebody else's password, he goes to his computer and he steals money from the company, etc. Whilst with biometrics, you know, to find that guy is difficult. But
Yes.
with biometrics, I mean, you'll log in with your fingerprint, so it must be you that actually did the transaction.
Now you spoke about other things apart from fingerprints. You mentioned DNA, for example. You mentioned iris scanning. Are those all, you know, part of the security layers within your company, BioSSL?
Yes, we at the moment we're using face recognition and we're using fingerprint reading. Voice, we're working on it now, and in the future we'll see DNA. It seems like it's going to be the future.
And how do you actually authenticate the person then, if you don't save the password?
Via server. In other words, the server will authenticate at the end. So you will put your fingerprint down and it'll go via the internet, via the layer, and the server will authenticate it. And on the server is specific, quite complicated, what shall I say, programming or programs that actually decrypts it and know it's you.
So, Gawie, your product is really aimed at fintech in particular, and really that ultra-high security. When you look at what's happening around us, you hear the common words like blockchain and you know, all these different financial terms that are bandied around. Where is that all going? Where does blockchain fit in, and Bitcoin? Where do they fit into your organization?
With the blockchain, we've looked at Bitcoin and the blockchain, and as per the banks are really looking into blockchain to have better security, because the blockchain is already very secure. What we're doing now, we're busy working on software that actually fits into the blockchain. So it's traceable, transactions are traceable, etc., and it's more secure.
That is a bold statement. A company to watch, BioSSL. Gawie Keyser joining us in the studio talking about security in SSL and fingerprints. And of course, you know, we're all petrified about that. We love to hear your stories. Have you been hacked before? Tell us about your stories of how you've been hacked online, whether it's your bank account, whether it's identity theft, for example. Join in the conversation. We're at CNBC Africa. We'd love to hear your stories.
The North Carolina State University Phytotron is a facility for growing plants under various combinations of strictly controlled environmental conditions. Scientists are able to conduct all sorts of plant research there, from studies of disease-resistant crops to drought-proof grasses to new biofuels. It was built in the 1960s and it was used a decade later to help prevent a collapse in the US corn crop from fungal diseases. Now, after more of a generation of such research breakthroughs, the Phytotron has finally received some much needed additional support for a 21st century makeover. Let's take a quick visit to the Phytotron, which sounds like a B-grade science fiction film, but it's actually a very interesting way of looking at an important maize industry, which of course is what so much of South Africa's economy was originally built on, agriculture. Let's take a look.
Think of this as the Fort Knox of labs. Here, scientists like Eduardo Gutierrez and Victoria Abarracin suit up for hazardous duty, studying how to clean up soil contaminated with pathogens like E. coli and Salmonella.
We're using real-life pathogens in there, so we have to be very careful and very safe.
Welcome to the Phytotron on the campus of North Carolina State University.
Oh, that's peanuts.
Plant virologist Stephen Lommel is the man in charge.
This is a very unique facility. There's only a couple of them in the world. There's plant breeding, there's turf work, there's looking at ozone, control all kinds of gases in the facility. So there's tons of things you can do here that you can't do in a lot of other facilities.
8 days old, right?
Here, it's all about the plants. The secure plant pathology is done in what is called a biosafety level 3 greenhouse. But that's just part of what they do here.
It was a fungal disease that nearly wiped out the corn crop in the 70s. And they used the Phytotron to figure out what was happening so we didn't have this huge collapse.
With support from the National Science Foundation, the Phytotron was built in the 1960s and now is getting a 21st century makeover.
Oh, it's really been a major innovation. We've taken a fantastic facility that was 1960 technology and re-energized it now with modern technology. We've replaced a lot of the greenhouses, we've sealed all the floors, we've added the new BSL-3 greenhouse.
Plant geneticist Peter Ballant-Curti is developing new strains of fungal-resistant corn. He says the Phytotron is a control freak's dream.
You can control the conditions precisely the way you want to, and then you can just change one of those conditions and see how that affects disease resistance.
Plant biologist Heike Sederoff works on making biofuels from canola-like plant varieties.
So we are working on this plan to produce biofuels, bioenergy for jet planes.
She essentially changes the seasons inside these chambers, working out how to maximize the yield.
So we can have side by side a chamber that mimics summer or very cold temperatures. So we've been able to more than double the oil yield of these plants. Without the Phytotron, we would have, instead of the 3 years we needed, it would have taken us 10 years.
What's a dead corn? Is that teosinte or?
Lommel predicts research here will produce breakthroughs like new strains of cotton, disease-resistant banana trees, new drought-proof grasses for golf courses, and hardier, more productive strains of food crops. If you build it, they will come.
Well, FNB, we believe, is the first bank in the world and definitely on the African continent to recently launch their own branded version of smartphones into the market. You know, they're made by a Chinese company and they've literally, just branded them themselves, and FNB have gone to them and said, we want this. So, they've spec'd them per se to suit them. And what's interesting is that the two models, and I must show you the boxing as well, which is really a quality product. The one is called the Connexus A1. This one is aimed at the low-end market, and this phone is going to cost you 59 Rand a month. And with that, you get 15 minutes a month airtime, and you get 50 megs of data every single month. And you can obviously top up as well. So it's really a pretty decent phone for what you're paying. It's the bottom of the range market phone, but it's got an FM radio. And what's quite interesting is FNB have thought about it long and hard. And if you look inside the box, there's even, apart from the additional memory, they've also included a battery bank as well. And they're saying that, a lot of their consumers that are going to be using this kind of technology, they need to be able to recharge. So they've included a lot of these extras that make it a really good value proposition. So that's the one phone that they introduced. It's the Connexus A1. And the other one is the more premium value phone, which is the Connexus X1. And this one is going to cost you 150 Rand a month. You get 100 megs of data, and I think you get 50 minutes of calls a month. And really the idea is to get more of their customers to start using their smartphone banking apps. These are locked to the FNB network, which is a MVNO, which is a virtual mobile network, if you're wondering what it is. And basically what FNB are using, they're using Cell C's network. They're piggybacking on that. And the idea with this one over here is it's linked to your rewards as well. So the better your tier system is on the eBucks reward system that they have on FNB, you get money back every month and you get discounts. You can get 40% discount on your airtime. So really interesting to see where FNB is going with this and launching their own branded smartphones. Who knows what they're going to have next, tablets and a bigger range of these devices, but certainly taking the market by surprise. And a lot of consumers out there are surprised by what FNB is doing. Hey, that's it for tonight's show, folks. Don't forget to tweet us using that hashtag TechBusters. We're at CNBC Africa. I'm at Aki. He's at Shap Shack. Keep that conversation going online. Thanks for joining us. Good night.